Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio on a glorious Libations Friday, loosey-goosey edition of the program to you and yours. I'm Jeff. He's Tom. We're on YouTube. We're on Periscope. Hello, YouTubers. Hello, Periscopers. Take a peek at that ACC Network hat. Email the show if you like, jcs at 97.ESPNradio.com. On Twitter, it's at Cameron Show. WTSM app, good for your mobile devices. If you're having problems with terrestrial radio or the stream, you just break out that WTSM app. Also, don't forget, we'll post the show upon its conclusion to iTunes. And that's a good thing for you. It's also on our website in the archived audio. Go ahead and go to iTunes and subscribe and rate, review, and send it on down the line, if you will. All right, JB Holmes. All right, Shane Lowry. See you guys out there doing some things, along with Tommy Fleetwood and Lee Westwood and Justin Rose and Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, and a few others. It's a good leaderboard at the Open Championship. Should make for a great weekend. I'll sprinkle in some Open talk here and there. Tiger misses the cut, as he has in every major this year, save for the one he actually won, which was at Augusta, which will be something to fall back on because he certainly accomplished nothing else throughout the course of this season. But in saying that, I am geeked about the idea that we get a Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see a pairing there. Could be. We get a and just in short, I mean, I think it's really cool that the consistency of Brooks Koepka, man. Think about that guy in any tournament. It's not a major. He had one good tournament this year that wasn't a major. Everything else has been pretty substandard, and yet there he is. It really is about the way he focuses in these majors.
Yeah, it is. And, he said something a little earlier this week that
ruffled feathers.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way he said it is that other tournaments don't matter. Either they do or they don't. He's got to figure out his message this offseason and then just, I'd say, stick with it. Because
they do matter, and his sponsors really think they matter.
Yeah.
And you got to be smarter than that, Brooks.
Right, that's the thing. Well, he said last year, entering this year, that I've got to get better in the regular tournaments. I've got to take those more seriously. I got to take,
yes.
It doesn't have to be hyper-focused the way it's the majors, but I've got to have a better plan. And then at this point of the year, it's the eve of the final major. He's talking to the media this week, and he says, listen, those tournaments don't matter. When you see me play golf, that's the only time I'm playing golf. I show up there on Wednesday, and I just play because it's all about the majors. Pick a plan. Just pick one.
That's also a mistake. Regular season NFL games matter. Regular season college football games matter.
Do the playoffs matter? Because that'll be an interesting test. There's no more majors. There's no
right. The playoffs matter. You play on a tour. The health of the tour dictates that great players have to care about playing great all the time. I mean, that's how the tour stays relevant and healthy. Everything can't be a major. Is there added importance to the majors? Yes, unquestionably. But how you play year-round matters to your legacy. It matters to where you rank amongst the all-time great. And it certainly matters to those tournament organizers who spend their year prepping for your presence in that tour. The sponsors spend a lot of money, and I'm sure they're not happy to hear somebody summarily dismiss them as irrelevant. It's just not smart, man.
Right. Now, if you don't care about the money and you just want to win majors, then just say that. I'm fine with that if that's your stance, but it's just you got to pick one.
I doubt it. I mean, how many people?
Well, no, he'd still get tons of dollars from endorsements and sponsorships.
Well,
because
I think he'd get less.
Sure.
Oh, he'd significantly cost himself all kinds of money if he did.
He already is by not playing well in those tournaments. In terms of the exposure they could get for it. I'm just saying pick a message and stick with it. Listen, whatever you want to have it, I'm going to root for you. You're a Knoll, and you're one of the toughest golfers I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, he's a badass. There's no getting around that. I mean, we nitpick a little bit because we want him to be better. I mean, he's capable. He also just needs a better PR guy.
Right.
I mean, somebody to,
And Brooks, would it kill you to wear a shirt that looks like Jeff's? Just that color.
Garnet.
I mean, that's more of our purplish current garnet.
He could have.
But that's close enough. I take it.
I know. Well, we've asked about it before.
He's still my guy. Listen, he's still my guy. He doesn't whine around the golf course like so many of his contemporaries.
No, it's by far and away the best attribute that we could apply to Brooks Koepka's personality is that he does not stomach those that whine about playing golf for a living. It pisses him off when they do, and he's not about that. And I'm good with that.
And he loves the Ryder Cup, and he really takes that to heart to be on a team and to win a team event. So those two things combined, plus the fact that he actually has answered the bell, that he stared Tiger Woods down, that he stared Justin Rose down, or
whomever.
I mean, at this point, it's just Dustin Johnson twice. It's everybody that he's looked in the eyes and said, I'm better than you, and he was right for a major.
The only time he didn't is, and he played well, but the only retort was Gary Woodland said, no, you're not. Not today.
And to Brooks' credit after that, even when he arrived out here at Portrush, he said, listen, the one I missed some putts here and there earlier in the year. That was the Masters. And he said, the other one I just got straight out played.
Yeah, Gary just
That's nice. That's nice to hear somebody say that.
Yeah, it's important. It's important. We talked to Willie Taggart. You guys heard that interview yesterday on the program. We haven't had a chance really to react to our interview with Willie Taggart. On today's show, you'll hear Steve Adazio in the 5 o'clock hour. You'll also get a chance to hear from Dino Babers, the Syracuse head coach, and you'll also hear from Tanner Muse, the safety at Clemson. And those are good interviews, too, and I'm excited about it. We love the Adazio interview. It's a running bit on the Jeff Cameron Show, so you guys will get that one. This is probably the best one we've ever done. It's one of my favorite interviews because it's got a little bit of everything in there. It's somewhat lighthearted, but also gets serious, and I do ask him to break down lessons learned from what was, I think, aptly described as a disappointing 7-5 season for BC a year ago. So that's a good listen. Listen to that. But let's you and I real quick react to what I thought was a very good Willie Taggart interview, and it was less about my interview. I don't think I was on my game as much as Willie was on his. Willie was very upbeat. That is the most enthusiastic I've ever heard him. And he's always a glasses half full kind of guy. He's always a guy who's going to take a look at the positive before the negative. But there was a willingness to take responsibility, but also an enthusiasm for what he thinks is the shift in attitude, work ethic, and ability. And that is a sign that if I can report to you this, since I was sitting directly across from him, you can't always tell in an interview, especially guys that are polished, that I think is a legitimate reason to be somewhat optimistic of what the season is going to be. And that is because, Tom, you were right next to me. That was genuine. He was authentic in his belief that things have turned the corner. I don't know what that means for a win-loss total. And that's really, since this is a bottom-line business, by the way, all of sports is. You can love a coach or a player, but it is about winning and losing. That's a bottom-line business in sports. So it matters that all that enthusiasm turn into W's, admittedly. But I think if you're trying to project the possibility that things are going to be a lot better this year than last, seeing that attitude, hearing that attitude, those conversation nuggets from him is a good reason to believe that.
Yeah, and I think when he took responsibility for those things from last year, and I'm so glad, and you even said it in the interview, that you could finally put this to bed. You know, it's like the last year is finally over because this is the last wave of questions. When he did take responsibility and he did describe some of the lessons that he learned, that was true. He didn't say it just because he knew he had to. You could tell that he was thinking. He was, I wish we had a little bit of video of it because he was really thinking his way through the answers. There's a couple times where he pauses because he wants to make sure he says the right thing and what he actually means.
Yeah.
It wasn't a prepared statement, I guess, is my point. It came across as genuine, and I love the nuggets he had about summer workouts. But like I said before, I feel better after that
but it
interview.
Is still clicky pins.
But I've got that little alarm inside because we've been to that place with different coaches up in Charlotte or Pinehurst or wherever the hell, and they've said all the right things, and we think, wow, it's going to be better this time, or it's going to be an improvement over last year, and then it wasn't. I do like everything they did, though. I think they hit on all the right notes that they needed to hit on to at least give themselves a fair crack for some enthusiasm come fall camp.
And now all that's left is for them to get out there and start to practice and give us something on a daily basis to document something that is beyond speculation. And, here we go. It's about to happen. I'm part of some of the stuff we're going to talk about on today's show. The NFL training camps get underway. Guys reporting this weekend. You'll have actual nuggets as they begin practice and preparing for the first preseason football game. And, we're not that far now from getting actual football news at a camp right here in our own backyard. But plenty of time still to speculate on the ACC, which really is another kind of talking point leaving Charlotte, which is, that what has to happen this year for teams like Florida State or Miami. How far off are these teams in the league from Clemson, Also, who's the second or third or fourth best teams in the league, and just a lot of interesting sort of things to pontificate because, well, we love football.
And, of course, the most important question of all is how important is wine? And you get that answer later today in the 5 o'clock hour.
And then you'll hear it forevermore applied to any number of other instances or conversations because we will use that soundbite as part of a permanent legacy of the Jeff Cameron Show. That is an all-timer from Adazio you'll hear in the 5 o'clock hour. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men and a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
rust to rust. I let the others cast stones while I drew in the dust. I tried to be a good man.
Wondering about the British Open. I don't like to completely spoil these things. I sprinkle in mentions throughout the show today, but Florida State's own Brooks Koepka, 69 on the day, and finds himself in the top 10, and as a guy that top 20. Listen, if you're in a situation where you're within 4 strokes of the lead going into the weekend, you're fine. So, however this shakes out, even if you get a couple of guys who are still on the course as we do the show now that move into that top 10 and push him down, you're going to be right there. So, he's looked steady. He just hasn't been able to make a putt, and he said it. He says, "I can't make a putt right now." But if you're in the midst of not making putts and you're shooting 68, 69 to be -5. Okay.
Yeah, he's reading most of the greens pretty well. The speed seems to be a bit of an issue. He did miss one today where he just straight pulled it, and it would be, I think by his standards, inexcusable. But I like if you're within shouting distance of the lead and you're not playing your best golf. Because if you have played your best golf and you're still only within shouting distance,
you're in trouble.
That means you're not scoring. You're not cashing in on the many opportunities you're generating. He hasn't generated a whole ton of opportunities, especially not in round 2 today. So if you get through your bad round and you got a real good chance on the weekend, the odds say you're going to have a good one either tomorrow or Sunday.
Pretty cool for the fine folks over in Northern Ireland watching Shane Lowry. I mean, it's got to be amazing, first of all, as they watch a guy atop the leaderboard being introduced from the Republic of Ireland, and the place goes nuts, and then he steps up there and has played as well as he has. They thought that might have been Rory McIlroy, except for he went south with his first shot of the tournament.
Well, and I wondered, as I was driving into the office earlier today, he hit a bomb 40-footer to get him to 10 under at the time, and the crowd was going absolutely nuts.
Shane Lowry.
Shane Lowry.
I thought you were talking about Rory. I was
Rory,
like, Rory was never at 10 under.
Sorry, I'm talking about Shane. And the crowd does go insane. And I just wondered, given the tensions between the Republic and then Northern Ireland, if he would be embraced since he's got that flag at the top.
Yeah.
And he is.
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
It is very cool, and it's been cool to watch, guys. The other storylines here have been watching Lee Westwood, who has been a runner-up so many times and really a guy we've probably figured was going to retire without ever winning a major, and that's probably still true, but he is in the position as we go to the weekend to do the unthinkable. He goes 68, 67. He finds himself at 7 under par. He's right there with a chance. Who knows? You put together one more day, then it's just a final round of golf. Let's see what happens. It would be a cool storyline. I think Justin Rose, Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, who hit the ball terribly today on the back nine, but made every putt presented. It's a reason he's still in a position to be considered in contention to win the British Open. But the leaderboard's not lacking. I mean, it's John Rahm, it's Matt Kuchar, it's Tony Finau, it's Brooks Koepka, Justin Rose, Tommy Fleetwood, as we mentioned before, and even Dustin Johnson is top 20 at this point after he carded a 67 today to get back in it. So, he's at, 3 or 4 under? Mm-hmm. He's right there. So, okay, all right.
The course looks to be in fantastic shape, too. Again, because of the travel day yesterday, didn't get to watch a whole ton of the action. And I really didn't watch too much of a recap either. So today was my first crack at really watching these guys play it. It doesn't do any damage to the stereotype that Ireland is lush, because that course is as green as any Open Championship as I've ever seen.
Just beautiful.
The greens look to be as true as can be. Of course, they're always going to be slower over there for the Open Championship because of the threat of high winds. But the course looks great. It looks like it's a real fair test. And when you have a venue that's, being in the rotation for the first time or is in the rotation for the first time since 1951, you wonder if it's going to be fair. Like Chambers Bay came out of nowhere for the U.S. Open, and it was, widely panned as a terrible, terrible venue.
Terrible choice, yeah.
So I was worried that, Northern Ireland gets its first crack in 50-plus years. Right.
Yeah.
It's doing well. I think this one should be back in the rotation. It looks like a fair test, and I'm sure the players like it because they're scoring well enough.
It also looks like a place that I'd like to visit and play.
Oh, yeah.
I've been to Ireland, but I've not been to Northern Ireland, and I've not played golf there, and that's a must.
It reminds me of Brighton, even though they're on the exact opposite side of, one's the southernmost in that part of the world and one's in the north. But just to see the towns in the distance and, and the pastures and the rolling fields.
Beautiful.
It's really a gorgeous part of the world.
I want to go play golf there. That's every second I've watched this morning leading up to the show today. I was like, oh, yeah, I'd like to play. I'd like to hit that shot. That looks like a fun shot to hit. And obviously, I think that they'd have to suspend the rules of golf if we went and played because I'm not spending a half an hour finding a ball in the fescue.
No, okay. So I could tell you last year playing in Brighton, there was tons of fescue, and I rented a set. Not that that's the only reason, but it is a legitimate reason. I'm hitting a driver from like 1999. And if it goes in the fescue, don't even bother unless you want to cut up your legs. Like you really need to wear trousers, like full slacks, if you want to walk through that.
So just
stuff.
drop, right?
At some point I did. In fact, with 3 holes to go, I was on my last golf ball, and I made it. I made it home. I would have thought, what a tragedy this would be with respect to true tragedy.
Yeah.
To not be able to finish around when I finally get to play links golf. But you've really got no chance. I feel so bad for those marshals. That's crazy stuff.
I'm blown away by some of the places the golf ball goes there and they find it. Those guys do an amazing job because watching on television, like that's gone. Good luck. And if you're just playing as an individual, and I don't mean on the tour. I mean you and me go over there and play. I'm like, come on, man, Tom. We've been looking for 20 minutes. We're not gonna find this ball.
Oh no! After about 2 or 3 of them, I was like
we're done here.
Stupid. I'm out here with the cows.
So I read something that piqued my interest as we kind of central theme this thing about the ACC kickoff all show long and play some interviews for you later in the show. In that 5 o'clock hour, you'll get the Adazio interview. But, there was a preview. There have been a lot of previews. Some came out this week. Various websites don't come out with the previews as quickly as do the traditional magazines that are now online. And so I'm reading more and more of them as they do. And obviously, they lend a certain level of credence depending on the site. But there was an ACC overview with College Football News in which they were describing what the ACC could use. That, look, hey, you can claim you've got the champion. It doesn't really matter if you have a ton of depth because depth and quality depth, elite depth only really matters if you're trying to get 2 teams into the college football playoff like the SEC was trying to do. And really, who cares to do that? Well, they were saying how many teams they think could be bowl eligible, and they talked about like most of them, could be bowl eligible. That's a good sign for the conference. But then they talked about the need, and this has been a talking point before, for Miami and for Florida State to at least render hope to its fan base and shine again to show that there's a glimmer that, hey, it's not this year, but maybe next year. And when they were talking about it, they said, at the very least, the FSU and Miami programs have to look like they're on the verge of something. They have to seem like they're ready to go into 2020 as the, quote, are they back teams? Sort of like you saw Florida and Texas do last year now going into this year. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a fair descriptor, right? That's what this year has to be for us at the bare minimum, right? A year that leads to, at its conclusion, the conversation that starts with, are they back?
Yeah. I think that's perfectly put because that's exactly when you think about Florida and Texas. Now, we have a little bit more insight on Florida as to I'm not so sure. But you look at those 2 programs from the outside and you say they did all the right things to set the table.
They sent a signal that maybe something special is about to happen. And that's what buoys fan bases to buy tickets and to believe, and what engenders sort of an energy and enthusiasm that is sorely lacking here in Tallahassee right now. And it's just talking that way feels like it falls under the umbrella of loser talk, like what I'm used to hearing. So many programs that are somewhat fly-by-night also ran programs that have an occasional good season. That's the kind of thing I'm used to hearing their fans say and go, poor bastards. They so desperately want to be included, but they haven't really mattered for the better part of 20 years. Ha ha, as you walk on and, thumb your nose at the idea that maybe they'll be breaking into that elite group. But in truth, that's kind of where we're at right now is this, can we finish this season with a, hey, okay.
Sure, and don't you think Nebraska is somewhere between us and, Florida, Texas? Like they're in the middle, where by the end of the year you said, well, he's got a quarterback. So this isn't the year where he's going to win 10 games. But I think they can build on what they did last year.
Nebraska felt very good about the season they had a year ago, and it was partly because there were not false beliefs as to what was coming and what was possible. I think that we talk about tempering the fan base's enthusiasm and thought about elite-level play, And that's a dicey deal. That's a difficult thing to try to project, because if you do that, then you're not winning people over on the booster tours. You're not necessarily selling your vision to the kids in such a accomplished way, or an effective way is a better way of saying that, when you admit that you're not going to be good. But that's what he did. And it worked because the expectations were so low, and the thought being that they were in a dire state, that when they got hot late and won a few games, the fact that their record was worse than Florida State's record, they still had momentum when their season ended, and we didn't.
Yeah, because you got to see that that guy.
Growth.
Well, he can go to Columbus, right, and challenge them. That's another thing. It's about playing it a little bit closer to the better teams in the country, and they had every chance to win that football game outright. Whereas when we played, like you've said over and over again, anybody with a pulse, anybody who was any good at all, whichever phrase you want to use, we get dismissed. I mean, it's not even close.
No, not competitive. It's over by the time we start the second half.
Yeah, I think that's so well put. And I also want to point to people. We're not stumping for subscriptions for this particular outlet, but a great resource for me this offseason has been The Athletic, which I use for all sports. But their college football previews, they have in-depth previews of every single team. And I remember when I was in jury duty and I was waiting around, as you like to do in jury duty, there's a lot of sitting around. I read the Boise State one, and I thought it was really, really insightful as to all the stuff they've lost. They've got a new
ton of the offensive line, right?
Well, they've got defensive players left and right. They've got a new coordinator on defense. Offensively, you're talking about the best playmaker, the best running back. They got a new quarterback they're breaking in. It's just, Boise has a lot to overcome, but that was the place I went, and you get an in-depth look on just about everybody in the country, and they're rolling them out one by one.
So, it's interesting. When you don't temper expectations and you lead to a disappointing season, you create no buzz. Whereas if you actually have that horrifically disappointing season that we all predicted you to do, but gather a couple wins late and play somebody close, you do gain momentum. So that's the stark contrast between Florida State and Nebraska entering into this season. And back to, like you said, the descriptor here seems to be apt. You better provide something of an enthusiastic look, sneak peek into 2020 with your play in 2019.
Well, I mean, and we've been around the block so many times, especially, in the 10 years you've so graciously allowed me to be on this side of the glass. We've seen a couple cycles, because it was the rise with Jimbo in 2010, and then there was a bit of a downturn in 2011, but you rise back up, you win 29 in a row, and now you've crashed all over again, and certainly my undergrad experience was one that was terrible. But the pitch is so easy. It's cliche, but it's so easy. If you do just a little bit this year, 8-9 wins, and you keep it close maybe in one other game where it's against a premier top 10 opponent, it's an easy pitch to finish out the recruiting cycle. We're one or two players away, young man, and you're that player.
And also, though, Tom, and I think most importantly, and you're right, it does do that, but it will do it for the right reasons, because going back to yesterday's interview with Willie Taggart that the listeners got to hear, I thought it was telling when he talked about getting the kinds of guys in here that buy in and help shape the program moving forward in their image, in the way that they want the guys to behave and work and believe and all of that. Well, if all of a sudden you win some games and you see evidence that the supposed buy-in has happened, then the recruits that are looking from afar go, he said that would happen, and he's done this before, and look, they're doing it. Like, there's a reason now,
right,
like a tangible reason where you'd say that's not just a coach talking.
Well, and how many kids last year said that they loved it when they got up here? They loved the interaction with the coaches. They loved how genuine they were. And some of you even said that the younger guys, they loved the culture of the younger guys. But they just didn't win enough.
No, they couldn't just suspend disbelief, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like all these things seem right. I don't know what's going wrong. So that's why I'm going to Clemson. That's why I'm going to Alabama,
Just because I can't put my finger on it doesn't mean it's not happening. So I'm going to go over here.
Right.
Yeah,
but then if you give him what you're saying, which is he
Tangible
said this was going to
evidence.
happen.
Yeah.
He said it, and it actually did. And now when he tells me that he's rebuilt programs before and he's done it successfully, I've got proof here that it can work also here in Tallahassee. And I already love the guy, and I already love the place, and these other players are already great. Well, why not? This sounds like a great place for me. All of a sudden, you turn into an absolute threat to the better teams in the country, but there's the little matter of winning those 8 or 9 games in between then and now.
Hey, by the way, just because you had me do it, and I'm going to be looking at other teams in the next 3 weeks, we'll probably do W's and L's out the wazoo because that's who the hell we are.
Yes.
But I'm looking at Nebraska, going back to the beginning of this conversation. No, we don't need to do it. We don't need to do it, but I'm just, okay, I'm trying to get a feel for here. I do think they got a good start. They got a good start, man. I mean, they're playing they play Utah State, which is always a difficult game.
Yes.
But Colorado,
Well,
Northern Illinois.
Is Utah State going to be a difficult game this year?
I
You're
will
the
let you
whisperer.
know.
You're the whisperer.
I will let you know. I don't know yet. No, they don't play Utah State. They play South Alabama.
Oh.
I saw the U.S. and the
Okay.
yeah. So I got confused. They play
US
South
and the A.
Yeah, so I got confused here.
Makes me tear up every time.
I'll pick South Alabama to get beaten by 46 points in that game at Nebraska on the 31st at noon, and the Huskers are off and running. It's the Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men and a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
Where every name and every face seems so
Fun to be talking college football again. Calls coming in now where I get that chance to go on in other markets, and not only is that fun for me, but it's a chance to gauge what they're thinking about the league. And I did a couple this morning, did some over the week while we were in Charlotte there, Tom, and I'm sure now they'll start to multiply. And this is cool because I always use those conversations with other hosts in other markets to try to, again, get a finger on the pulse of their view of the league, their view of Florida State. A lot of times it's implied in loaded questions and the like. So today's featured a discussion about the rest of the Atlantic, but also the Coastal. And you and I were talking up at the ACC kickoff about how it is abundantly clear as you sit in Charlotte at the West End and engage, but also observe behaviors of coaches and players from the other teams not named Clemson. How obvious it is that everybody is playing for second, and Clemson knows it's the belle of the ball and knows that they kind of dictate terms in a way that we used to. And, you know, again, Florida State always was the needle mover at these events, whether it was disdain, whether it was celebration, whether it was the obvious standard that they had set. But that is no more. It is Clemson's world, and we're all just living in it. But a persistent question, both there and then now from radio hosts that want to have these greater discussions, is who's number two? Who's the second best team in the ACC? And I don't know the answer to that. I think you can make a case for Syracuse, but it doesn't feel right. I mean, the evidence suggests maybe that it's them, but I'm not buying it. I know they have to move on from Eric Dungy, but Tommy DeVito is supposedly more than capable, and certainly his pedigree as a recruit suggests that he would be. He's an Elite 11 guy. But I don't know that we'll see that right off the bat, right? Dungy helped a lot of bad things go away when plays broke down a year ago with his legs, and he was tough too. And so I think they fed off of that. And Syracuse, let's not forget, was the benefactor, now some of it created, of many a turnover, led the country for a long period of time. I don't know if they finished that way or they were top three, but them along with Florida seem to be the two most fortuitous teams in the league. And that's not usually something you can replicate. So there are some hindrances with this team. They also lost a top-notch receiver. So, okay, maybe them. Anybody else in the Atlantic you feel real good about? NC State's defensive line is nice, but that's not an elite team.
Yeah.
I think Wake Forest is okay, but no, there's nobody. Boston College loses 3 starting offensive linemen. They lose some secondary. They didn't throw the football successfully enough last year from a consistency standpoint. Now, you'll hear Adazio in the 5 o'clock hour today. He seems to think their offense is going to be the best he's had. So that may be. I'll have to see it to believe it.
Just in watching a lot of BC games last year, because of these Adazio interviews over the years, they have a lot of open players, but the quarterback can't hit him. They scheme a lot of things open.
Yeah, the kid throws it at about 55%, 54% clip.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
And when he's on, he'll throw 4 in a row, and you go, oh, whoa, they may score 40 today. And then you get to the fourth quarter, and you say, has he made a throw since that little hot streak he's had?
You recall the alarming game they had last year. Was that the one against Purdue where they got blown out?
God.
They got blown out early in the season. That was their first and only loss. They ended up going to 7-1 before it all fell to pieces against Clemson, and then they lost their last 3 games.
Oh, the Purdue game was disgusting. I may have had an interest in that game, and BC was tied with them, and then they had an open shot at the end zone, another one, and then they missed it. Purdue scored the next, 3 or 4 touchdowns in that game. They just got
it was ugly.
Annihilated.
Well, I think the problem was watching BC's offense be completely inept against the Purdue defense.
They couldn't move the line of scrimmage.
It's unbelievable, right? So we were really a little worried about them then, but they went on to bounce back from that.
But that was a good precursor to Purdue, Ohio State. If you had some interest in that one, you saw
the speed on offense. Is
right?
What you saw, yeah.
But then you saw the toughness on defense to neutralize the offensive line a little bit. That was a veteran O-line for Boston College, and to see them get pushed around, you say, well, maybe this Purdue team can rise up on a given week.
Well, so that's the Atlantic. In a nutshell, what I'd say to you is that, okay, so yeah, what don't we know? Well, we already knew we were fighting for second. What we don't know is who is the second-place team in the Atlantic. And if you're a Florida State fan, you're saying, why not us? It certainly should be us. I mean, we ought to move into second place here and start to make inroads towards the top. The Coastal I was asked this question this morning. What do I think of Miami? I don't know. Manny Diaz has never coached.
Yeah.
I've never seen him be a head coach. By the way, you can say all the right things, and he has.
He did. He won the day, Coastal Day, at the ACC kickoff.
Well, first of all, he has. That's what he's done best so far. He has been a magnet. He has drawn attention, the right kind of attention to Miami, with his brashness, his willingness to accept that standard and that worldview. In a way, that's who he is. That's how people in Miami think, and how that team for so long identified, right? That they were brash, that they were bold, that they were talkative and didn't back down. And, he's kind of tried to promise their return to that. And he raided the transfer portal and all of that. But we haven't seen him coach a game yet. I mean, Willie Taggart said all the right things last year, too.
Yeah. I think in listening to some of the coverage, too, from up there from Sirius XM or watching it on TV, Virginia also was a team that's talked about a lot. It's amazing how Virginia Tech has just fallen from grace, that Fuente was going to be one of these leaders, that it's going to bring Virginia Tech back to prominence and maybe balance the ACC a little bit more. They're an afterthought. But the Cavaliers are talked about a lot more. Mendenhall wasn't afraid to say that he thinks that they have every right to be back in Charlotte playing for the ACC championship against Clemson come December. And that, for me, at least makes it all the more interesting that in week 3, if you're looking to battle for second place, you've got a good game to get an idea of who stands where week 3 when we travel up to Charlottesville.
UVA football schedule 2019. Is that what we're doing right here? You want me to pull this thing up? Do I have to do that? All right. Wins and losses. Virginia football T, Lizzie. Let's go. WWWLs. Wins.
All right. How you doing?
Losses.
Damn it! We lost! We f***ing super lost, man!
Where do we triumph? Where doth thou fall? All right, here we go. They start out with Pitt. I would imagine they'll win that game. It is a road game.
So I heard driving home last night, Packer and West Durham were the two that they were doing the Radio Row up there, and they had the two kids from Virginia on, and I guess they had to keep them for 15 minutes. It was excruciating. But the thing I laughed at the most was at the end, Packer said, well, that Pitt game's going to be a huge one to start the year. And I said, really? That's where we're going with this? Don't sleep on Heinz Field. Heinz Field, it's a problem for people. Yeah, like the Browns and the Bengals.
It makes me laugh, by the way, and I would I'm not as bullish on Virginia. I know what they did, and I like Mendenhall, and that's fine. Are you a big believer in Virginia right now?
I'm not saying 10-2 or 9-3, and I know we'll go through it here in a second. I'm just saying it's the Coastal. The Coastal's open for business, and we're not exactly in a place to brag about where we stand in the conference as a whole. So if we believe that we are second place worthy in the ACC, surely that we must circle this game against Virginia as something serious, something to take seriously, being on the road.
They play Pitt to start right off the bat, and a chance to make a dent in the Coastal against a divisional champ, Tom Lang. They don't play another game in the division until mid-October when they go to Miami. They have to go to North Carolina as part of a 3-road game run in 4 weeks. Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech are the games at home to go along with those in the final month. They don't have to leave the state in the final month. Obviously right off the bat in the middle of September, they get this game against the Atlantic and us in Florida State. So I am curious. That is part of a 3-game road stretch against Florida. That game, and then they play Louisville later on. There's no Clemson or NC State to face is what I'm trying to get to. So
Louisville, right? Yeah, if you're looking for cross conference games for the year, you have Louisville and us. It's not as bad as it would be, say, 5 years ago, right?
No, this is a doable schedule. They're probably celebrating this right here, Tom. That's suddenly, now that I've pulled it up. Okay, so at Pitt.
It's a win for the Who's.
1-0. We agree. William and Mary, 2-0. Now they host Florida State University September the 14th.
We backdoor an FSU W&L in here.
Oh, I like that. Oh, I thought you were just guaranteeing the W.
I am picking Florida State to win that football game.
Me too. And just like that, we've derailed the Who's. They're 2-1.
It's out of the division.
It's coming off the tracks, Tom Lang. We've got Virginia at 2-1. Then it's Old Dominion. They're 3-1. They go to Notre Dame. That's a loss. 3-2. They'll lick their wounds with an open date. They come back and they play on the road at Miami. That's a loss. 3-3. Come home to play Duke. 4-3. Then at Louisville. 5-3. At North Carolina. Coin flip game. I'll give them a win, 6-3. Georgia Tech at home, 7-3. Beat Liberty after another open date, 8-3. Then they play Virginia Tech, 9-3 for the Who's.
Okay.
And a hell of a way to end the year on a winning streak. But if you fall one time during that stretch, and it's possible, certainly you can look at a couple of games like Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and Louisville. You could drop one of those that I gave them a win in. And if you did that, or Virginia Tech for that matter, if you did that, obviously that's a 4 to 5 loss season for Virginia. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But
yeah, I said it's a soft 9 in the projections.
very soft.
Not as soft as the song, though.
Would you? I'm trying to think. Would you take the under 9? I didn't give you.
If you said it at 9, no, you didn't. That's fine. But I agreed with 90% of it.
Yeah, I could tell. I think you agreed with all of it.
Yeah, most of it. the coin flip North Carolina thing. I think I'd favor Virginia in that game. Listen,
Well, it was on the road, is why.
That's true.
And it's late in the year, so North Carolina may have found their stride.
I hope. I mean, they better hope so if they're looking to win 4 games this year. If you set it at 9, you have to take the under. What are they going to hit over? They're going to hit 10? No way.
8-4. I feel more good.
If you set it at 9, that's easy. If you set it at 8, I have to think.
It's tough, man. The point is, there's a whole lot of mediocrity in this league. That's really what I'm telling you here.
Yeah, so you got a knockout game for the most. Is it most mediocre or least mediocre? Because you're better in week 3.
Less mediocre.
You're less mediocre.
Yeah, you're less mediocre.
Yeah, but that could mean one of two things. It's almost like doing stats.
I already said about us that, listen, if you beat Boise State and Virginia early in the season, and obviously you'll win the sandwich game at home.
Right,
in your home
we
opener,
win the national title. Right.
I already said at 3-0, there will be a level of confidence that has not existed around here in a couple of years.
Oh, more than that.
More than that,
For
right?
September. If you're just talking about seasons over in September.
We have been completely derailed in September forever, so that's why it's so vital. That and you're trying to convince people that things are going to be different.
If you go 3-0.
Woo!
If you start 3-0.
Tom Lang, talk to me about 3-0.
You're going to get to the bye week undefeated because you've got Louisville and NC State here. After that, you're
5-0.
If you start 3-0, they're going to have such confidence, and this place might actually have a few people in it for those next 2 games.
This talking point that we have beaten into the ground is, I think, illuminated once again here when you begin to look at these other schedules. Yes, it is paramount that you beat Boise State, and that if you gain some confidence from having done so, to go on the road and beat Virginia, you can alter the narrative in 4 weeks, 5 weeks. You could just alter the entire – this has been running for years, this narrative, and it's been accurate. But you can shape it. You can change it. You can mold it more to your liking. Now, that's not a big deal. Winning games is what matters more than the narrative surrounding Florida State. But I do think you could remove the pall of the greater conversation, and that's important.
Yeah, a few wins and a little bit of spin, and that gets you a top 10 class, right?
And all of a sudden, even if it's fool's gold, which it might be, see Miami and all those great starts, and then, down the stretch losing 3 or 4 in a row. It did enable them to buoy enough and put together classes that perhaps didn't belie the true level of their play. But that's what happened, and that's what we need. And that's what Florida got a year ago. I don't think that Florida team's good, but they won 10 games.
Yeah.
Now, he has not been able to parlay that into a good recruiting class. That's a bit of a problem.
I think we would, given the way we're recruiting with a 5-7 season, and then after that season heading into the next year. Yeah, give these guys a fair crack at it.
I agree with you. So I'm getting nervous now, man. See, we start talking about it. I'm like, come on, there's a lot on the line here.
Yeah, the Boise games.
It's a big one.
I don't know.
Yeah. We're going to win that game going away. Lopsided victory, baby.
Then the landing will come to life for the first time.
They closed the landing, buddy. No more wings and cigarettes for the fine folks of Jacksonville.
I never got out there.
Oh, it's okay, buddy. It's all right.
One of the great regrets of my life.
There are a lot of places you need to see. You'll be okay not having seen the landing. Hour number 2 forthcoming. Stay with us, Jeff Gabriel Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men and a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
2 on this glorious. I say it's glorious. I just was ready for Friday. I don't know why. Maybe it was the driving. I was ready for Friday, man. Also excited to get up this morning the way we did and watch a little bit of that British Open and kind of get a feel for what the weekend's going to look like as I get up early these next 2 days. I'm going to do it. And watch as much of this British Open as possible. That's it, right? It's the last major of the year, so.
It's funny, when I turned on Golf Channel this morning, and because I didn't really catch much of yesterday, so I turned on Golf Channel this morning, and I watched the early coverage and go, I don't remember these graphics because I watched it on Sky Sport last year. I watched it on the English feed.
Yeah. That's already been a year, though, huh?
Yeah.
That's amazing. We're online at ESPNTallahassee.com. You know that. You can go there and listen to the show streaming. You can find it on iTunes when we conclude. It's Libations Friday, loosey-goosey, an hour where I will touch on an NFL story that's not loosey-goosey, but let's start with this one that is interesting to me at the very least, and that is, hey, man, NFL training camps are underway. They're starting. It's happening. Basically, they're reporting a lot of teams today. You got Monday is where they get going for real. We'll get real information out of this. Guys will, for example, report and they don't pass their physicals, or perhaps they're overweight or underweight. Others who look great and in tip-top shape, and picks that have signed and have it, and all that good stuff. The meat and potatoes are the games. But you can start to smell the brew, right? It's happening. Now, we're getting here, folks. I mean, the ACC kickoff, check. NFL training camps, soon practice, check. Okay, it's starting to come alive. Now, if the weather would cooperate, and it won't, but you'd feel a tinge of coolness in the air if it did, and you'd say, okay, we're on board now. I am shifting my mindset.
Yeah, it was oddly, even though the days were, 98, 100 degrees in Charlotte.
Not that hot in Charlotte walking around in the evenings.
If you're walking around in the evenings or first thing in the morning, the place I stayed at had a gorgeous sunrise, and so I walked out into the deck. Man, it was a little nice.
It was nice.
It's a preview of what's to come in, say,
no
mid-October.
Football, no football wins have started.
No.
Those don't exist just yet. That is, when that happens, that first football win.
And we do play a ton of home games in September this year. I mean, I know we have to go out to Jacksonville. We've been there and done that. But then we host the game week 2. We go to Virginia, and it's a long month. I think there's 5 Saturdays this September. So we play Jacksonville, home, road at Virginia, and then home again before we get to October. It's a lot of bacon in the sun.
Yeah, too much. Luckily, we're members of the press, so we'll sit in the air conditioning and watch the games, Tom.
Or I'll sit in the Memorial Champions Club.
It's fun to read the stories. If you go paper to paper, like if you go the way that a lot of hosts do, and you see you wake up and you pull up a website like ussportspages.com or newspaper.com, and you go through and you find the sports sections of each of these cities. I went down straight to Tampa, as I'm wont to do, obviously, and you have nothing but articles on your upcoming season. So if you're a Jags fan, Times Union, you go over there, click on that sucker. I'm sure there are Jag stories today. A lot of kind of refresher courses, if you will, the overview articles about, these are the free agents we lost. These are the guys we signed. Remember, this is who we drafted. Here are the expectations. Here are the weaknesses and the strengths of the team. And most diehard fans have a pretty good handle on a lot of those, but not every. There's always these little subtle moments where you're like, oh, that's right, we signed Ndamukong Suh. I forgot about that. Or temporarily forgot about that. That changes the way I look at this defensive line, perhaps, if he's motivated. It's a 1-year deal, for example. But I'm going to read a quote to you from Bruce Arians, the new Bucs coach. And really, as we look at the NFL, you look at new coaches and big-time free agents. Where did they go, right? And so there's plenty of intrigue every offseason, and one of them was the Bucs convincing Bruce Arians to come out of retirement after just 1 year and find his way back to the sidelines, where one of the things I like about Bruce Arians, and I like coaches in general who are this way, there's not a lot of mealy-mouthed nonsense like the previous guy. This guy will tell you if a player is fat and out of shape or needs to play better. He'll tell you if he's done a poor job, meaning himself or others. And he doesn't mince words very often. But he's talking about Jameis Winston. And, of course, the Tampa media will always lead with the negative with Winston. It has been something that has been steady happening since the day he was drafted. they're not wrong when they note that he took a step back last season, if you will. In the early part, obviously, he had a 3-game suspension, so that's not good. That speaks to a lack of maturity, and then had to pay the piper for that. But then he was benched for 3 other games, and that's, he had a 4-interception performance against Cincinnati, and he really cost us the game by himself there. And we talked a little bit about that time, him needing to be benched, so we were even-handed there. We admitted that. But it is interesting to note that once he came off the bench and figured it out and had kind of, I guess, paid the price and learned the lesson, his completion percentage went way up. The decision to run and when to run and when not to, and when to get down and to avoid turnovers, it was all on display. In a nutshell, he kind of became the guy that you wanted to see him be a little sooner than now. He became that player, and he was electrifying. His completion percentage, by the way, has gone up every year he's been in the league. He's a guy that has set certain records, franchise records for that matter. It hasn't been all bad. And Bruce Arians is known as the quarterback whisperer, right? This is a guy who has produced great seasons over the years for some of the bigger-named quarterbacks in the league. And I am curious to watch and see what he does. He had this to say. Look, Jameis was trying to look off the safeties for too long, and his feet got crossed. That is what he mentioned, talking about footwork and all of that.
Or
and
the
what
deep ball.
Yeah. He said, it's very mechanical. The other problem Jameis has had, as I see it, and he talked about looking at the game film from last year, is that he was always down 21 points. Anyone down 21 points is going to throw interceptions. He's down 21 a bunch last year, guys. You're going to throw picks. Tip balls, bad balls, they happen. It can happen. But you think you can hit everything, and I want a guy who does. Give me a running game, though. Give him a running game. Give him a defense. And then we'll see what he can be. I think he will limit turnovers. I like what I got. Thank you, Arians. Thank you, man. How about that? A balanced assessment of his quarterback. One that ends on a positive note because, you've hitched your freaking wagon to him. The previous guy never seemed to get that.
No, he never did.
I mean, that is as straightforward as it gets.
You ever notice a Dirk Cutter looks like Rand Paul with a whistle around his neck?
Yes, he does. I've thought that for a long time, yes.
They're like cut from the same genetic cloth.
Smarmy.
Well, that too.
But, and so it was interesting, and he was excited. One of the reasons that Bruce Arians was excited to join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the biggest reason was Jameis Winston. He got the quarterback that he wanted to work with and said as much. He has a GM that he's familiar with in Jason Light. Better way of writing that or saying that would be that he could steamroll. So there's that. But he has been a very good offensive-minded coach, and he's gotten the best out of his quarterbacks everywhere he's ever been. And I think it is telling, and it should be to Jameis, that the new head coach chose Tampa and to come out of retirement because he liked you.
Yeah. Yeah, that should be refreshing to a lot of people. And much like where we are in Tallahassee with the offense and the offensive coaching staff, I'm going to clean up something. August 31st is the first Saturday. Would have driven me nuts. There's not 5 in September, but we start August 31 against Boise State.
Got it.
We're really happy about the offensive staff changes, and we feel like, okay, these are professionals. They know what they're doing. They're on the same page. And so now we don't have to worry about guys not being prepared or guys not being in the right place. That's the feeling for Florida State. Same thing at Tampa. Like, I'm happy about the Arians hire. I'm more happy about the guys he brought in to lead the offense and the defense. Todd Bowles, as a defensive coordinator, is considered to be a home run hire by anybody who knows anything about football in that league. And then you look on the offensive side, Arians is the offensive mastermind, but Byron Leftwich already has play-calling experience, and he's also been a quarterback in that system. So you should have a good intermediary to translate the message that Bruce may be trying to say when Jameis and he butt heads. It just seems like the plan he had from the top of the organization down has a lot of logic to it, and we didn't feel that way in the previous
Tom,
staff.
a lot of professionalism to it. I totally agree. And let's not forget, when I allude to the success that Arians has had in previous stops, remember, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Andrew Luck, Carson Palmer, he's had success with all of those guys. So I dare say, by way of comparison, Carson Palmer and Andrew Luck, very Jameis-esque.
Well, and Ben, in terms of what he does when the play breaks down. He gets outside the pocket and what he can do on the move.
And a really strong guy that's hard to bring down.
Right.
No, there's a lot there, man. These are guys that I think when we try to compare and contrast the strengths and weaknesses of Jameis, we often point to the version that we say is a less athletic version than Andrew Luck, who's one of the great athletes in the game. But Carson Palmer is a similar one, too. Big, strong guy, largely a pocket passer. When he has time, makes plays. It's his best chance. There's no doubt.
Also, there's a little bit like Florida State addition by subtraction in Tampa. That Deshaun Jackson is off the roster. It makes me feel in a similar way that I do about Florida State with DeAndre and Naquan off the roster. You got more people who just want to work together. That helps too.
Well, and you can obviously, I don't know what it's like in a professional locker room. Pros are, what they are. These guys, this is how they feed their families and all of that. And where Jameis got himself in trouble in that locker room was that he was a little too immature and rah-rah collegiate-like for these 30 and 35-year-old men, 28-year-old men who've been in the league for a long time. They tuned him out for a little while. I think that lesson has been learned, obviously. But what I do think is interesting is that bad apples, whether in high school, college, or pro, do translate. That's always a problem, especially if they're influential and high paid. And then Deshaun Jackson was that guy, right? And a real problem.
Yeah, he was. For me this year, and we'll do the Scuttlebucks, which I'm excited to do again down in Tampa. The number one storyline with Jameis that I'm looking for has nothing to do with the coaching relationship or the deep ball or anything like that. I want to see what he becomes as a leader with a coach that he has now, his coach is in the style of Jimbo Fisher, right? Where he's not going to sugarcoat anything to you on the practice field, but he'll also put his arm around you and work with you.
Yeah.
Dirk didn't do the second part enough until it was too damn late. But Jameis, in my mind, and I know we disagree here, I don't believe Jameis has ever been a true leader of a football team and not a compelling one. Because in 2013, he was one of the guys, but he wasn't the guy. And in 2014, our work habits as a football team were terrible. They were awful. Then he gets to the league.
Yeah, but I'm not – okay.
And it's Vincent Jackson, and then it's also Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, and the way Dirk Cutter was as a coach above him.
Did a player take a greater leap off a cliff than Vincent Jackson from year one to year two with us?
It was crazy.
Oh, my God.
But Jameis very rightly acquiesced and said, listen, you're the veteran here. I'm the rook. Bring me along and show me the ropes. And Vincent was a great guy, especially off the field, to learn those or impart those lessons to Jameis. But I don't know that we've seen a fully realized leader in Jameis Winston, and maybe this is the formula that allows for that to happen for the first time.
Well, I think that the decision he made over 2 years ago is all going to culminate with the opportunity to be the leader that we've wanted to see him be and the maturity that he didn't have. I think it's all there in place now. I think he's probably more comfortable in his body, in his mind, in his shoes than he's ever been. He has a coach that completely believes in him. Admittedly, I'll say this now. If he plays poorly over the next 2 to 3 seasons, we're done. It's just he can't do it. But I don't believe that's going to happen. I think he's going to play well. And I think we've seen enough stretches of time where he played exceptionally well in a less than ideal situation.
I'm not worried about the play, especially with what we saw last year after he hit rock bottom. How do you respond? When has he ever hit rock bottom?
Well, he did last year.
It was a performance against Florida, and that's about it in his college career. I mean,
there was a lot going on that weekend. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
He was uneven the first half against Auburn. That was he had a lot of butterflies going because that's an Alabama game. That meant more to him than playing Florida or Miami.
And then they had our plays.
Right. That helped as well.
Yeah.
But he hardly ever hit rock bottom in any way, shape, or form in college. But in the pros, now is the first time in your career that people they're laughing at you. They're laughing in your face. They know what's coming.
In the midst of the season, yeah.
How do you respond to that? And the way he came back out of it, I don't worry about the play anymore. He's going to be productive.
Well, we always knew that, and he has been productive. It's just got to cut down on turnovers and know when to run and when not to run. And then we saw that in the second half of last season. He was exceptional. We know the quarterback rating in the league the last, 4 to 6 games was better than anybody else. He had the number 1 rated QB passer rating outside the pocket as well. So
yeah, but after Cleveland and then Cincinnati, you go, ooh, what is this the end?
No.
You're worried about, is this the end?
Yeah, he looked shot, didn't he? That was bizarre. That'll be one of the more interesting stories. The Bucs aren't good enough to compete and go, win a Super Bowl or anything like that. I don't want it to get twisted. The Bucs will still lose enough games that people will have questions about Jameis Winston, but they'll be the ones not paying attention who are kind of following up on the lazy narrative. If they lose games, it'll be because they're still not good in the secondary. They can't get after the passer. They're inconsistent in running the football, and so those will be the reasons they lose games. But can they get to 8-8? I think that's really the thing here this year. Can you get to 8-8? You get to 8-8. You're moving in the right direction. First year coach, or first year in Tampa anyhow, with Arians, and Jameis plays well. You might be able to recruit a couple people in next year and get some real positive momentum for the first time. I think the Bucs have finished last in that division 7 of the last 10 years.
It feels like it.
I think
It feels like 10 out of 10, personally.
I think that's accurate. It might be 8 out of 10, Tom, now that I think about it. That'll hurt your feelings.
Well, it brings apathy, doesn't it? I think if our quarterback was Marcus Mariota, we wouldn't be doing the Scuttlebucks because we wouldn't care. we wouldn't care to.
Well, that's one NFL story. There are others. One of them that I'm going to be bringing up is not a good one. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men and a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
What the technique?
This isn't so loosey-goosey as I'd like it to be on a Libations Friday, meaning this next story. It's not a good look for a league that's made a number of mistakes on the PR front. And, I get it because it can be really dicey and convoluted and difficult to discern and occasionally legally a bit of an abyss to fall into. It's tough when you're trying to balance the rights of players legally and also the league's PR efforts. Their ability to sanction and discipline players outside of the law, obviously, is part of what a league can do because they aren't part and parcel to those laws necessarily or rights necessarily. You can violate a league rule. That's not a violation of a criminal statute, right? So we understand how this works. And I would think at the very least, Tom Lang, this would fall under that category of doing damage to the shield, right? I mean,
yes.
This at the very least would be something. Never mind the player's history, which you can't overlook because precedent matters always in assessing penalty, blame, and discipline. The NFL, though, has said it cannot determine whether Chiefs wide receiver Tyreek Hill violated the league's personal conduct policy and will not suspend him with regard to its recent child abuse investigation. I can help them. He did. This isn't hard.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard the tape. So have they. It's in violation, one would think, of the personal conduct policy. Saying, bitch, you better fear me too, ought to be in violation of a code of conduct with the NFL. I would think that's not how you want your players conducting themselves while talking to his wife, fiance, mother of his child, whichever she was at the time of that recording. I can't remember. But that said, you wouldn't want a player saying that to a woman at any point for any reason, ever. And for that to see the light of day, meaning she called the police and was in fear of her life, we're done here. That's all I need. This is one of those times where I would defend a commissioner if he said, listen, I get that legally they can't bring charges because we can't prove that he had abused and broke his child's arm. It does look like he certainly did. It would appear that he is guilty of that, but this is different because it's a court of law and I have to be able to prove it, and we can't, so we're not going to file charges here. That is different. I got it. And if the league said, we'd like to do more, but they're not filing charges, so we can't, so we're just going to penalize him under our violation of code of conduct policy, yeah. I think universally, players, fans alike would go, that seems right. Yeah, you'd like to suspend him for the year or life if he truly broke his child's arm by abusing him repeatedly. But legally, since that's not the charge, you're going to have to go with the tape, which is at the very least a violation in our conduct code.
Well, if you put it together with what he did in college, too, that he pled
History
guilty
matters.
for.
Yeah. History matters.
Well, precedent does matter.
That's right.
That's how you suspend for longer periods of time because there is something beforehand. Even if you're not a part of the league at the time of said incident or alleged incident, yeah, the commissioner has more unilateral control to do what he wants to do. This is a real head scratcher, and it takes me back to a long time ago when the owner of the Chiefs said we're going to make the right decision at the right time, which was code for we're going to wait this out and see what happens.
Tyreek Hill is a game-changing player. He is a critical piece to the success of their prolific offense in Kansas City. And make no mistake, that is the reason they wanted to, quote, wait for more information to come out, because the last thing they want to do is somehow put a governor on an offense that took the league by storm last year with a unique quarterback whose abilities to exploit the deep ball and buy time with his legs would be severely hindered if a Tyreek Hill wasn't on the other end of those those lid lifting routes, right? I mean, that's world-class speed we're talking about. But I dare say that given who the Kansas City Chiefs have been and the problems they've had with players, see the running back, we move on. I mean, they've had issues. They had a player kill somebody. I mean, this has been a horrific situation in Kansas City. Some of it's not their fault, but it did happen, under the umbrella of the Kansas City Chiefs. I just think at some point, maybe something other than winning football games comes into play with management. I mean, I know that's so naive, but the league, the franchise, the coach, you mean to tell me that nobody has a problem with that being evident, overwhelmingly so, that Tyreek Hill is a terrible human being, a dangerous human being who has abused his wife and his child on more than one occasion and doesn't seem to show any remorse, but rather doubling down in those phone calls and those voicemails.
Andy Reid doesn't give a damn. His quote months ago was, I'm a coach, not a lawyer. I believe I have that right. It was short to the point, and it essentially said, if he's allowed to play, I'm going to play that guy.
Yes, and that seems to be the standard, but it's a shame because I don't think it ought to be. And I understand that this isn't always black and white, cut and dry.
This isn't murky, given his history. That's the whole thing here. If this was on its own, on an island, nothing about Tyreek Hill ever existed in the past in the way of nefarious acts that he pled guilty for or was alleged to. This is not. Sorry, these are extreme circumstances, and it's unbelievable to me that in these circumstances, add this to the Adrian Peterson one. I mean, there are franchises in the league that are okay with kids being abused.
So long as the abuser can run real fast.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, and this isn't murky, and I think that's the area that concerned me the most. If you go and listen to the full audio of that recording, there's not much wiggle room as you begin to try to discern what happened, who was guilty of what, battery, violence. It's all in there. Short of him saying, yes, I broke my child's arm and I'll kill you if you tell anybody or anything. I mean, he didn't do that in the phone call, right? But
yeah, he says you need to be terrified.
You need to be terrified of me too.
Of me too. And he also says
two being the key word there, it's T-O-O. We know who the other is. Mm-hmm. It's his son whom he just broke his arm.
Right. And he says I'm the one who gets physical with him also in the tape. This after choking her when she was pregnant with him.
Well, it won't be hard to figure out which team you can't root for this year, that's for sure. And it won't be hard to admit that as you watch Kansas City Chiefs games, you hope that irreparable harm comes to his knees.
But you know what's amazing to me? So first of all, they let Kareem Hunt go. But second of all...
I brought that up. I mean...
I know.
Yeah.
But second of all, this is an organization. This is one of the few in the league that could absorb this type of loss if you're just looking at it from a football standpoint because you've got the toast of the league, the new sheriff in town in Patrick Mahomes. Everybody loves that guy. Everybody can't wait to watch that guy. You wouldn't lose season ticket numbers. You wouldn't lose ratings, but you might lose a couple more football games, and that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah, it's interesting to read the various articles on this incident and to look at the tape, read it, and to kind of figure out the NFL's angle here. I just marvel that was the conclusion that they came to. I don't know if they were worried they would face legal action from Hill's team. I'm not sure what it was that they were, because again, the league does not have to abide by the same standards as the police.
Zeke, look at Jameis, and look at this situation. You tell me what their standard is for doling out suspensions.
The league had this to say, and it makes you roll your eyes. Throughout this investigation, the NFL's primary concern has been the well-being of the child. Our understanding is that the child is safe and that the child's ongoing care is being directed and monitored by the Johnson County District Court and the Johnson County Department for Children and Families. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they're involved in monitoring the child's welfare?
It's because nothing happened.
I mean, it's just... Local law enforcement authorities have publicly advised that the available evidence will not permit them to determine who exactly caused the child's injuries. But the phone call could have, because the mom is telling them, as she accuses him of breaking the child's arm, and in essence, cutting to the chase, his response is, yeah, maybe I did, and you should be terrified of me too. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm afraid the longer I talk on this issue, the more inappropriate I'll be, if only because you can't abide ever with violence in the home and against children.
If I am the Kansas City Chiefs at this point, or if I'm the league, I direct the Kansas City Chiefs that for all home games, they must allow Tyreek Hill to come through the tunnel with all the pyrotechnics. They've got to embrace him in such a way that he is front and center at all times. Sometimes teams introduce the defense, the starting defense, because that's the better of the two units. I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas City is so proud of Tyreek Hill that the defense would be the group that's announced as starters each week that they play their home schedule.
That's a toughie. Well, people over the years, because they don't want to be genuine when they have these conversations, will say things like, well, it's abhorrent to hear people root for injury for a player. I can't do that. No matter how bad a player is or a team is, you can't do it if you just dislike a team because they're a rival, but you can certainly do it if you know that individual to be an abhorrent piece of garbage that is a threat to children's welfare. Yes, I'm rooting for him to get hurt. Every time he takes the field, actively rooting for him to get hurt. I'm not going to lie about that. I mean, I think most people, willing to be honest, would say, yeah, me too. Dude broke a 3-year-old's arm.
Now starting for the Kansas City Chiefs at wide receiver, number 10.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men and a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
Man, I was thinking as I was watching this morning, did you get up early? I know we were weary from travel, but did you get up early today and watch the British Open?
Not as early as I wanted to. I was up around 6:30, and I rifled through most of Brooks's round. I stopped for his shots on the DVR so I could see, the full breadth of what he was doing.
By the way, for those that don't know, Brooks Koepka today going out and shooting a 69, 2 under. I believe that is 7 consecutive rounds and majors in which he shot under par, which is really remarkable. He does find himself in contention, obviously, as guys like J.B. Holmes, Tommy Fleetwood, Shane Lowry, and others have played so well, but he's right there in the mix. And the thing to say about that with Brooks is that he's just steady Eddie, man. 68, 69, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. For the stretch probably between about hole number 7 and hole 13 or 14, he was average to below average, but it didn't derail his day. And so if you could get in playing your C-plus stuff, and that might even be kind, if you got your C-level round and that's still 2 under, and you're within a handful of strokes of the lead after day 2, that's right where you want to be. I mean, a lot of guys, when they have their average stuff, they're shooting 74 and 75, not Brooks.
I think the interesting storylines here, and there are many with several big names in the mix, and including a local that people would love to see. That's always cool when a local makes a run like this, like Shane Lowry is. But I would tell you...
Even if he is a Catholic.
But what I would tell you is I can't ignore how neat a story it would be and how emotional everybody would be watching if it happened who's paid attention to golf for the last 25 years. If Lee Westwood is still standing on Sunday the way he's currently standing, for those that don't know, Lee Westwood has been exceptional. Carded a 67 today. He's 7 under for the tournament. He's in contention. If Lee Westwood, he doesn't even play a full schedule anymore. He doesn't even participate in all the majors anymore.
Yeah, I was wondering how he was qualified for this thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, he's had so many top 2s over the course of his career. He's probably there's some
got exemptions down the line.
Yeah, down the line. But he, I think the totals, and for the reasons that I just gave, it would be a story. He has however many runner-up finishes. I know he's got like 5 top 3 finishes. I mean, in majors. I mean, that's the guy, right? I mean, he's never been able to close the deal. He's admitted he gets nervous, and it's shown on Sundays. And so at a time when your career is almost over, he missed the cut at the PGA. He hasn't even been – to come out of nowhere, this tournament allows for it. The British does. It does. See Tom Watson, 59 years old, nearly winning this thing. So oddities occur. I mean, we're watching some other guys that haven't played good golf in a long, long time play good golf. And so, maybe, just maybe it can happen. I just think that would be a great storyline. I don't root against the good guys who, admittedly, you could call chokers. There are guys who choke, and there's just no way around it. You say, man, the pressure of the Sunday gets the best of them. But I like the ones who admit to it, and he has.
Oh, Lee Westwood has long been a punchline of mine, and you know why that is? It's because I've invested in him and rooted for him.
You wanted him to win.
And I finally had to at some point say, I'm off you, Lee. I'm off you. I've trusted you. I said, this is going to be it for Lee Westwood. And this weekend, if he does it, man, I swear. I don't know that there'll be a dry eye in my household.
It would be highly unlikely, given who's atop the leaderboard. I mean, he's going to have to overcome.
He'd have to navigate an incredible leaderboard, yes.
Well, he would have to win with the likes of, supposing that they don't have a terrible day tomorrow. But, I mean, Koepka is going to be in the mix because that's who the hell he is. Fleetwood, Justin Rose. All those guys are in the mix,
J.B. Holmes.
That, too, would be an interesting story, right? J.B. Holmes shooting a 68 today, 66-68. He's now 8 under for the tournament, and he's played a terrible batch of golf this year on tour. He's been awful.
Yeah, he won way early in the season, and it's been
nothing ever since. Yeah. He's been a cut-missing machine. He's played so poorly that it's raised eyebrows because he's always been a consistently good golfer. Never great, but good. And he's missed cuts left and right. I believe the stat coming into the British was in the field, he was last in strokes gained putting. That's a problem.
Well, when you slow the greens down, it could bring a lot more players to the top. And I think that's where you see the old guys reemerge, because the hands go around the greens. But if they're rolling at a 7 or an 8, and all it is about ball striking and hitting on the green and having a 20-footer, well, it levels the playing field. It's why Darren Clark won it at an advanced age. It's why Mark O'Meara won it at an advanced age. And Tom Watson was threatening years ago and should have won it at a really, really advanced age. But That's what makes it awesome in its own way.
And a good example of it, Darren Clark is going to make the cut. So that's pretty remarkable. Does he even play golf? I mean, when was the last time you saw Darren Clark play golf? Maybe when he won the British?
Probably on playing with the pros on Golf Channel.
Yeah. One thing that also stands out to me, though, we talk about ball strikers with the weather, and it's so important. And Brooks is incredible as a ball striker, and so is Tommy Fleetwood. And going into this tournament, I thought, Tommy's not playing real well, but and being a great ball striker here really matters. And so you have a situation where some of these guys, even to an extent that Sergio didn't play well today, but he played well yesterday, these great ball strikers who are consistent in that realm give themselves a chance to overcome the weather.
Well, I think there's something to be said, too, for coming down the stretch on a Saturday or a Sunday, and again, going back to the greens for just a moment, that you can actually hit the ball. You don't have to touch the ball or place the ball. You can give it a good wrap, as they say. That frees you up from the nerves because you're attacking. It's almost like you're attacking a putt. I mean, I grew up on a Muni course, a little par 3 thing, and it was probably rolling a 6 or a 7. You had to hit the hell out of the ball around the greens. There's freedom in doing that. Then when you get on the actual quick ones and you're 47 years old and you're trying to come down the stretch and navigate and win yourself a major, man, every 1/10 of the pressure you put in or what's a pressure unit? I don't know.
Yeah.
But your grip pressure, every little percent of your grip pressure matters greatly as to where you're leaving yourself a 1-footer or a 4-footer for par, and you don't have the nerve to do it anymore. Over there, man, go after it. You can hit center cut. You can take break out of it and hit it as hard as you want.
Overriding story that we haven't touched on here that I think is awfully big is the fact that Tiger Woods shot a 78 yesterday and looked like an old man who was out of his element. Now, he bounced back today and shot a 71 under and looked much more like Tiger Woods. I'll be honest with you, because he hasn't always been honest with us. Some of it is gamesmanship. Some of it is pride. And other times, Tiger likes to make bold claims. We know that, right? Well, I think that's true when he's playing well, and it's true when he's playing poorly. There were times during his comeback where he would tell people he was fine, and you and I would watch him, and I'd go, dude, he's not walking like a man who's doing fine. He is barely putting any pressure on his feet when he walks. It's sort of this, he looked like...
It was the Ryder Cup last year. That's how he looked this week.
Right.
He was so gingerly walking around that course last year.
Last year he was tired. He was exhausted. He had scaled the mountain, if you will. He'd done everything but win a major, and he had been in contention in majors, and then he came back and he won the Tour Champion. He did.
And he had to get in a plane and be on European time.
And his schedule was, filled in a way that it hadn't been since he was a young man. So all of that made sense to me. I don't know what I believe and don't believe right now with Tiger Woods. He obviously is going to be one of the rare golfers. You got to go back to Jose Maria Olazabal in '99 to find a golfer that wins the Masters and then subsequently misses the cut in the other majors. I mean, what are we doing here?
Well,
I would say this. I do think, obviously, he can't do some of the things he did when he was 20. We know that, and he's had all those surgeries. That's real. That's not fictionalized. We know the surgeries happened, and that's true, and he's had to rebound from all that. But yesterday he shoots a 78, and he says he can't move the way that he once did, and he hasn't been in. I'm not buying it. I watched his round today before we came in, and he looked like the Tiger Woods of old. He turned just fine. He made shots. He was sharp with his irons. He played, by and large, say for a couple of holes, but the British does that. If you find the fescue, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble on a hole. I mean, everybody, even Tommy Fleetwood, who played great today, goes over the green on the par 3, and he's made a mess. It just happens, right? So his lot in life today was no different than everybody else out there. His ball striking was fine. I don't know if – I'm just trying to read into it because, again, yesterday he said it was because physically he didn't feel up to it. I think, oddly enough, I don't want to agree with some of the people who feel like maybe the goal was just to come back and win a major. Maybe the goal was just to prove he could do it one more time after all of the physical ailments. The thought process was, whether he knew it or not,
yeah,
that he poured everything into that final time. One more run. Let's make one more run. And then to go and win the Masters and to overcome Brooks Koepka and Francesco Molinari and some of the game's elite to do it.
Yeah, Dustin.
Yeah. He had proven to himself what he needed to prove. It was a moment, we all admit, where, I mean, you had the feels. nobody could believe it.
Captivating. Yes.
It was probably one of the biggest sports moments we've ever watched, right? This was an iconic moment. We'll always remember where we were, what we were doing when Tiger Woods returned and won the Masters. And we all got nervous. I was on the verge of puking down the stretch. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, Corner Pocket opened early on Sunday so that you could watch it, and that's where we went.
But it's just, is there a huge mental release which leads to a relaxation, which leads to a lack of focus that we've seen with Tiger Woods post the Masters?
I don't think it's a lack of focus. I think, honestly, I think he's telling the truth here. And I understand where you're coming from.
Because I don't always believe him.
I agree. I'm 100% with you that he will lie right to your face. But I do think when he says after the round yesterday that the reality of his condition at this point with his body is that sometimes it's going to feel good and sometimes it's going to feel bad, and you just got to fight through bad days. I think he was being honest. Watching him walk around the property yesterday, that wasn't the same. I mean,
yeah, he didn't look right.
No,
that's the only thing that gave me pause as to this theory that I was developing. And maybe I'm askew here because he didn't look right physically yesterday, but he sure looked good today. And
he said he had to go to physical therapy and treatment.
Well, go get it before you start round one then, because what are we doing?
You have to do it every day, though, is what he's saying. This is part of my life now. I have to do this every day, and some days it's going to be good, and some days it's going to be awful, and I have to work through it on those bad days.
I don't want to see this version then. He can call it a day. I mean, listen, you can't be out here practically throwing up an 80. I mean, you stop that. Nobody needs to see Jack Card at 84. Nobody needs to see Tiger Woods throwing up at 83.
Everybody had to see Tiger Woods card 80s and look like an a-hole for 2 years in order for him to find his way back to winning a major this year.
No, that's when he was trying to play hurt. When he was playing hurt as opposed to shutting it down and having the fusion surgery. Once that surgery happened, he didn't play at all. That's what made this comeback so good, was that he had to physically recover from major surgery and then find out whether or not he could play. That was better. When he was hurt and playing, that's when you got these crazy yips with the chips and pulling out of tournaments and shooting 83. That was just a dude playing injured.
But I think at the time, though, we said the same exact thing. I think what he's doing here, and again, I think this is where he's telling 100% the truth. I do believe him to be a little bit different in that regard. Okay. He hasn't always I thought
he's been better since he's come back.
The way he handled Sunday at the Masters, I was a little like, oh, there's a little old Tiger still left in him. But what he said yesterday after the bad round was, listen, I can't play a full schedule. I can't play anything close to a full schedule. I've got to do my best to peak at the right times. I think every year he's going to duplicate the schedule he just played in order to be ready for Augusta. I think every year for the next 5 years, he's going to be gearing everything he does
Augusta
from November till April to play well and make a run at Augusta because he knows that course
and
backwards
and
forwards.
He can win. He can win 2 more green jackets.
Right.
He could
and play like ass the rest of the year. You know what I mean?
It's just so
weird. And
just
like, it becomes this weird thing where you're like, once you're like, well, Tiger, not so good over here, but this is the Masters.
I guess between April the 1st and August the 4th, Tiger Woods will have played in one PGA Tour event. That was the Memorial. And they were talking about that before, right? So Michael Collins brought that up.
He didn't sniff victory, but he was on the first page by the end of that weekend.
And he will now not be playing. You go through this. Look at this. I'm looking at. Yeah, he's trying to get ready for the PGA Tour's playoffs, which begin August the 5th. So he has decided he will not now play in the St. Jude Invitational, the FedEx.
That's interesting. I thought if you missed the cut, he played next week. Okay, so he's not.
He's not playing. He says he has to rest. It's not like you played a lot of golf here, my man. You've played virtually no golf this year.
Well, there's 2 things also. Again, this is where I think he's telling the truth. Number one, he values his time with his family. He says, I'm not going to practice the way I used to because I want to dedicate more time to my family.
And he can't.
And number 2, he physically can't practice the way he wants to.
He also practiced insane, even when, I know the results are the results. There was never a reason to go play 36 holes, hit 5 hours on the range, run 4 miles, and then go to the gym. That was because you were insane and wanted to be a Green Beret.
Agreed. That's where I was going to go, is that block quote yesterday where that is his routine. He can't even sniff that anymore.
Well, nobody should unless you are a Navy SEAL. What's the point of that? There's you're not a middle linebacker. Stop that.
I'm of the mindset, and this sounds so cliche, and you're going to roll your eyes. Tiger can do whatever the hell he wants to. He's earned that right because
he's got 15 majors. Yes.
Because still the best. the best he's got is still good enough to beat all these guys. We saw it earlier this year.
Yeah, it's just I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon. Maybe next year at Augusta.
Probably in April.
Jesus. Hey, next hour, our man Steven Dazio is going to join us. You're going to want to hear that interview. It was a good talk, as always, up in Charlotte. We'll also talk to Dino Babers. You'll hear from Tanner Muse of Clemson as well. Final hour forthcoming. Stay with.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men in a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
the Jeff Cameron Show, at least for this week on a glorious Libations Friday. Hope you're well. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jeff, that's Tom. It's good to be back in the studio today. Fun trip to Charlotte, and the fruits of that trip to Charlotte, you heard some, obviously yesterday, but also this hour, where you'll get our annual tradition. You'll get our Steve Adazio talk, me and the coach. Just guys being dudes from Charlotte. You'll hear that coming up in the second segment. We also talked to Dino Babers, who a year ago would be the surprise of the ACC, coming off a 4-8 season, back-to-back years. Obviously, nobody anticipated Syracuse winning 10 games a year ago. Not only playing great offense, but defensively, they got after the quarterback and forced a lot of turnovers. So you'll hear from him, his thoughts on their ability to try to replicate what they just accomplished a year ago. Really, that brings us to a bigger question, which I'll pose here in a second. And then also Tanner Muse, the outstanding safety from Clemson, who will have a shot to play in the league, that's for sure. Good instincts and a real good football player. We asked him what it was like playing for Brent Venables. I kind of used the Tanner Muse interview to ask him some questions about Brent Venables, whom we would all like to see move on to his own head coaching job somewhere outside the ACC at some point, or maybe just the NFL, Brent. Why don't you just take it to the NFL? As always, we're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. That's where you're going to listen live via the streaming free. If you missed anything, go back, get caught up. All 3 hours get posted upon the conclusion of the show. And you can also find it on iTunes always. Like I say, share that with your friends and rate and review and all that good stuff. Email us, jcs at 979espnradio.com. On Twitter, it's at JCameron Show. Back on YouTube, back on Periscope. And if you're on YouTube, you see the latest ACC Network ESPN cap that yours truly is sporting. It looks sharp. It's a good cap.
It does. I just wonder if people will be able to see it. You know, we'll find that out in about a month's time.
We'll be able to watch the ACC Network in the comfort of our living room as they bring us the best in sports entertainment starting just in August, Tom. It's going to be great, buddy. Wave the flag. What a celebratory moment.
It looks like you've completely shaken off Swaffy's.
Well, he wasn't teetering. He just said, hey, fans will have an opportunity. They should call their network. It really is, in retrospect, as David Hale and I talked about, I think just negotiation ploy. It doesn't. When you speak like that, you're not speaking from a place of strength.
That's correct.
And so it comes across as maybe waffling or perhaps real concern. I just think that truly, though, if you and this is the thing, look, we have tongue firmly planted in cheek oftentimes when we talk about waving the flag for the ACC Network. But I brought this up before, and I'll say that it is it's not admirable. It's at least it's I would say steady, consistent. I would say it was straightforward. Every time he got asked about it, every single year we went to the ACC meetings, he said it's coming. It's going to happen. It took a little longer than we would have liked. That's firmly established. Not much we could do. The ACC wasn't in a place in which it had leverage at the time that ESPN invested their money in the SEC. The network only became about because between Florida State and Clemson, the ACC has been able to capture a much more sizable segment of the football-loving world by winning 3 of 6 national titles. And it became a thing where, obviously, basketball annually, it's the best conference in the country. It finally gained enough momentum that ESPN felt comfortable investing in another league for a network. Well, once they decided that was a go, it takes time. You got to put in the necessary work to prepare the universities to have this 24-hour-a-day channel. And every time it seemed like, are you giving us a runaround? Are we ever going to get this network? Is this ever going to be a real thing? And remember, there were the rumors it was only going to be a digital network. There would be no linear network, no television network. He at every one of these meetings, he'd go, no, it's going to happen. Right. I assure you.
I know it's been 5 years, 7 years since the grant of rights, 7.5 really since the grant of rights, but we could do it.
Well, at the time that the grant of rights were signed, that was the first step, and there was no way ESPN was going to invest without knowing who was going to be in the damn conference.
Right.
So he had to do that.
4 years later, us to sign another grant of rights for them to greenlight the network.
They had to greenlight the network only after fully building the SEC network. The point is, every time he was asked about it, he never wavered and said they're invested, they're going to do it. Even when ESPN changed out presidents, he was like, no, we're good. They're still all in. That turned out to be true. That counts for something if you're trying to gauge the whether or not the finished product is going to be as we had hoped for. Because I think when he kept saying Disney's on board, ESPN is on board, the surest way for this to be a success is to be in lockstep with ESPN's promotional team. I assure you they're still in. That, to me, suggests they always knew, and we'll find out if it's different in the next few weeks, that they were going to get the necessary carriers, that ESPN and Disney was going to strong-arm, if need be, the cable providers into making sure they got an Xfinity, whatever program plan you
Spectrum,
want.
Dish,
all that stuff,
DirecTV.
right. And they've gotten a lot of them. The final piece of the puzzle will be, obviously, I think, Xfinity. I mean, that's the one that everybody wants to know that you have.
Well, sure. And maybe they're preparing for them not to get Xfinity, though, because that would explain why Florida State wasn't in the initial promo video. Because it said, no, you're not going to see them on the ACC Network. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, part of a bigger picture here. So let's utilize that. I know Ira wrote about it on War Chant. Of course, their table was right next to our table, and we spent a lot of time with those guys. We always do. And we were observing as they were, and you and I had our own thoughts on this and talked about it. I mean, it's fairly obvious now. I did a morning radio show in West Palm Beach today, and the host asked me, is the ACC returning to the way it was in the early 90s when Florida State was Florida State and then it was the rest of the dwarves, that there was nobody else that was even anywhere close to competing with the Noles? It feels that way right now with Clemson. It feels like there's not a certifiable second-place team that's within shouting distance of Clemson's prowess, and that includes us. And that affects the way you feel at the ACC meetings, which is we're kind of an afterthought in this league right now, and it's evidenced by its promotion. It's evidenced by these videos that come out that, man, there are young people working on these things that Florida State's not top of mind.
Well, maybe that's true, but I think in general where you hear the vitriol come from this fan base is they feel like they were an afterthought even when we were carrying the flag. I mean, really, by ourselves before Clemson became a thing. Because Clemson was a non-factor for a long, long time, pretty much when we joined the conference. From that point on until the last, 10 years, have they really been at all significant? Now they are the toast of the sport. And so you've got this idea of, well, we're the ones who carried us to this point, to the point where we could get a network, because football, as you know, brings in 70%, 80% of the total revenue for the entirety of a TV contract. And where's our just due? Then we're bad. And so you combine these two things together, and we feel like we're in a straitjacket because we're not making as much money as the SEC or the Big Ten. We are an afterthought within the own conference for two reasons. One, the perception that the ACC doesn't care about us. One, they're not really fighting all that well. And two, the fact that Clemson's way better than us. And so Florida State as a program, as a fan base, is being told kind of, well, you have to submit. Submit to the fact that the ACC is just not going to be as lucrative as the SEC or the Big Ten. Submit to the fact that Clemson is just way better than you. And now you're just angry in general. Anytime you hear the letters ACC, people go, oh, God, I can't deal with this.
Well, okay. If you would like to join the mouth breathers and chant SEC, I get it. But the truth is, we have to accept our reality. At the time that we were looking to join a conference, the SEC wouldn't have us. And so it is we moved to the ACC. We did carry the conference, obviously, and won national championships, and it did feel like it wasn't appreciated because we joined a basketball conference. But that was our reality. We knew it when we did it. And we joined a basketball conference that did not revel in our football success. In fact, they hated that they were lesser tier, that they were also Rans, that they were not formidable in any way, shape, or form. And so Florida State not only dominated the league, but humiliated its members. And that built resentment in a place that holds basketball on high and whose core is in the triangle of North Carolina and not down in Florida. So that is our reality. That is the historic reality. We're never going to be embraced, arms wide open, if you will, as a program to be held up. Clemson is one of the original members, and they are also located in an area that is more well thought of and near.
Oh, it's a short drive from Charlotte where we were.
That's right. So there's that. I would say the other problem is that conversely, I think we played in such a way that it made them feel like the rest of the world felt about Miami during their heyday. We were brash. We rubbed their nose in their inferiority. And I think that probably did, and I don't regret that. That's fine. I don't need to be embraced by the ACC. The financial realities you described, you don't have to make as much as the SEC nor the Big Ten in order to compete with them. We've proven that for a long, long time. You do have to be able to live somewhere in the general vicinity of that neighborhood, and that's what this network is intended to do. So if you get to that place, given the other advantages you have, where you're located, the cachet built up of 40 years of winning football, and then, of course, the ability to recruit in the most fertile region of the country, then you're able to overcome some of the deficits financially. You just can't have the chasm be between us and the SEC and the Big Ten the same as it is currently on the football field between us and Clemson. So that's what you got to do. And now that network is born, it's going to happen. I would suggest that it's not a good look to be bent out of shape when you're 5-7 and haven't been relevant in 4 years.
But my argument would be that we are bent out of shape by definition because we're 5-7 and we've been terrible for a couple of years and pretty bad by our standards for 3.
That's not the ACC's fault. Got it?
Right. But so here you got 2 chasms, right? You got the chasm between you and Clemson as a football program, which pisses us off daily. And then you've got the history that's 20-plus years long of feeling like the ACC doesn't appreciate all that we've done for the ACC.
Yeah.
They appreciate basketball history in a way that is unrivaled, right?
Right.
Since the Big East especially imploded. Now the ACC appreciates basketball history in a way that we wish if they appreciated football 1/5 of the way they appreciate basketball, perhaps we'd be held a little bit more in esteem. And so every time that Florida State is not mentioned or is not present in promotion for this network, that we did a lot to help build. People say that's great that the money may be coming, and I get it. This is the reality, but I'm not going to be happy with those 3 letters because I've got a generation's worth of history that says they don't appreciate us, so screw them.
Well, you don't have to like them. I mean, I agree with that. I don't think it's certainly not charming to watch SEC fans become blind with this idea that their unified front is somehow something to be held on high. When you listen to Mississippi fans chanting SEC after a rival of theirs wins a big game or whomever it is, it looks humiliating and embarrassing.
Well, just because you don't appreciate the SEC means that it doesn't mean that you embrace what Mississippi fans do or Mississippi State fans do in chanting SEC when Alabama wins a national title or goes to the playoff.
Right.
Just because you don't like the ACC means you like that approach either. What we're mad about is the lack of money and the lack of – I mean, would it hurt for the ACC to put out a promo, in the beginning of the network that shows all the traditions of Florida State football rather than, we're on a blue field and we got some sort of scissors out to cut some field? I mean, geez.
I don't disagree that they could do a better job of promoting Florida State's football rich history. They have failed in that regard, and it is at times inexplicable. But I just, as we get set to go into football season, as we just returned from the ACC kickoff, it's hardly my focus about whether or not. I mean, our fan base gets so pissed off to the nth degree about every perceived slight, and there are real slights that do occur. I'm not saying they don't. We get so hyper-focused on the wrong things right now, man. Can we get better at football? Can we do something? I mean, my thought right now is I don't care how the ACC brass thinks about us. I'm not worried about if we're on a 10-second ACC network promo that ran at the kickoff. I mean, it'd be nice. It's not cool. What I want to do is get good enough again to beat the hell out of all those teams and double middle finger the conference and just say, hey, here, get you some of that. We're back to being the badass, redheaded stepchild you hate, but you have to acknowledge is better than you. That's fine. I mean, that's what I want to do. I like the renegade mentality.
I 100% agree, but that renegade mentality is born out of disdain for the ACC in good times and in bad. And so even when the network's being launched, if we're angry about it, that's the natural precursor to when we come back, win 10 games a year.
It just makes us look so sensitive. We're looking for everything to be pissed about is all I'm saying.
We're building that chip on our shoulders.
We're just always looking for a reason to be pissed off. There are reasons, but, man, we look for them too.
I don't want to say it's completely chicken or the egg, but I think the ACC stacked up a lot of bad equity over the decades to the point that we are sensitive to it because what the hell, man? What did we ever do to you? And then at that point, that fosters real anger.
I'm much more inclined to die on the hill of Are your officials actively trying to screw us?
Right.
Now that is something.
That's where it all comes from.
Well,
What did we do to you?
Yeah, but looking into that matters more than, whether or not we're in a promo or the way the overriding bunch of ACC members feel about us. They're never going to like us because we were better than them for a very long time.
Well, maybe it's not correlation, but it feels like it. The fact that we're not in a promo for the network is like, see, there's even more evidence that perhaps there
Tom,
is.
they did fix it. We
Yes.
are now back in that promo.
They didn't fix it. They showed the extended promo.
Right. Well, apparently there were 4 teams not in the first one. It wasn't just us. So, I mean, that's worth noting, too.
Wake is pretty forgettable, man.
I don't disagree. I wouldn't have spent a lot of time on, say, Duke. Or, Notre Dame was in that promo and,
Right. Right. And this is the football kickoff.
You do need to join the conference for that. Yeah.
The football kickoff.
That was the only thing that bothered me a little bit. All right. So that gets me to the next part, which is this, okay? The ACC's reputation going into this season, we're just a couple of years removed from this conference puffing its chest out and saying, not only are we good enough, we're better than all of you, including the SEC. That's what this conference did, its fans did, because there was a depth of talent never before seen in the ACC. You looked at the draft. You looked at the depth of the wins and losses within the divisions. You had teams that were really good, head-to-head matchups. All that, for the first time, seemingly ever, really were going in the favor of the ACC. But it was a bit of fool's gold because as those defenses graduated players or had them drafted, the league took a step back a little bit. And obviously we could not have predicted Florida State's flying into the side of a mountain. So all of a sudden, the balance that the league had is no more, really. The great fight going into the season is who's going to finish second. And can the league restore a level of competitive balance and overall, I would say, prowess nationally? The answer to that question has to be with Syracuse, with, say, Virginia and Miami and us and a few others. One of them who's done their part has been Boston College. Steady winning 7-8 games so that the bottom tier teams, or the teams that you would think have the least opportunity from a recruiting standpoint to be consistent, are no longer, embarrassing 2-win teams. They're bowl-eligible teams. That's where the balance in your conference comes from. And our next guest, which you'll hear in a moment, is listen to me, Steve Adazio. And you talk about disrespect. Coach Adazio is one of my favorite people in the conference and one of my favorite coaches. And we developed a unique relationship over the years because they always give me Coach Adazio at the ACC kickoff.
This is leader in the clubhouse for interview of the year. It really is.
Well, and it's fun. And so we had a good time, and you're going to hear it in about 2 seconds when we come back. I recorded it the same day I did all those other ones, and it was, once again, one of my very favorites. And it's become an annual tradition. A lot of you guys, if you're new to the program and don't get it, just know that there's a long-standing history between me and Coach Adazio and our first interviews and pastry and talk of food and football and wine and everything else. And now you get a little bit more of it. And now that he's in on, not the joke, but the running narrative.
The legend
that is our relationship. I think he's embraced it a little bit more. I mean, we had a great talk, everything that included laughter to him tearing up, talking about failures and all these different things. And you'll hear it next on the Jeff Cameron Show, my interview with Coach Adazio next.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men and a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men and a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
Coach Dazio. We got more, so listen, this year we didn't lose recordings. I interviewed Dino Babers last year, and somehow we lost it. And
That's why I went up there, make sure that stuff doesn't happen.
well, yeah.
Not because of you, the connection.
No, yeah, connection up there could be spotty. But we had Dino Babers last year, and I want to say he was very confident going into last season. And I remember rolling my eyes without actually rolling my eyes. I mean, in my mind, I was like, okay. Because they had gone back-to-back 4-8 seasons. But he was confident that his team was going to play well, and boy, did they. They were the surprise of the ACC last year. So we sat down and talked with him. He's trying to utilize that chip on the shoulder with his team.
Oh, you'll hear it quickly.
Yeah, and he's hoping to obviously duplicate or come close to duplicating the season they had a year ago and turn the corner with Syracuse football. And then we also talked to Tanner Muse, who is the starting safety for Clemson, and a really good one at that. Wanted to get some insight on what it's like to play to Brent Venables. So for Brent Venables, you're going to hear these interviews back-to-back. So we're chock full here, and then you'll come back on the other side of that, and we'll rapid-fire, I think, some probables and get us out of here for the weekend. But we didn't want you to miss these interviews as well. Syracuse head coach Dino Babers and safety for Clemson, Tanner Muse.
how you say, with the pitching probables?
Brought to you by our friends at Jerry's Cigars. Hope you enjoyed the interviews. We worked hard in Charlotte, but it's a labor of love, that's for sure. Good stuff there. We have other tidbits that we'll bring to you along the way as we kind of get set for the season. It's not long now. And by the way, NFL training camps, as I said earlier in the show, get started.
And NFL training camps are really exciting because that's the sign. That's the last one.
Here we go.
It's the pros. That gets you set for college. You're like, all right, well, that means that in like 3 weeks' time.
Preseason football is starting.
Well, actually, when NFL camps start, that means that Florida and Miami are about to play like that next weekend because it's so early.
Rockies, Yankees, Kyle Freeland, J.A. Happ. By the way, Jerry Cigars, thank you for coming on board and sponsoring this segment every day. We love you, Jerry's.
Yes, we do. And if you need to get a victory cigar for that trip over to Jacksonville, 2810 Sharer Road, 2910 Cary Forest Parkway, online, jerrycigarshop.com.
Red Sox, Orioles, David Price, John Means. David, you just need to let that fight go. My God, that thing never is going to end. What are they going to do about that? It's uncomfortable. Phillies, Pirates, get you some, young Matthew. We're going to derail the Phils. Jake Arrieta goes tonight for the Phillies. Jordan Lyles goes for the Pirates. We won't win tonight's game, however. The derailing won't begin tonight as Jordan Lyles sucks. Cardinals, Reds, Adam Wainwright, Tyler Mahal. We got the White Sox and the Rays, Ronaldo Lopez, Brendan McKay, Blue Jays, Tigers, Marcus Stroman, Jordan Zimmerman, Royals, Indians, Mike Montgomery, Shane Bieber, Nats, Braves, Patrick Corbin, Julio Teheran. Don't look now. What are the Nats doing? Playing some baseball.
They're threatening the Braves radio network.
Yes, they are. Rangers, Astros, Mike Minor. What a season he's having. Justin Verlander also having a fine campaign. Goes for the Stros. Good game there. A's, Twins, Chris Bassett, Jake Odorizzi. We got the Brewers and the D-backs. Jules Chassin. Taylor Clark goes for the D-backs. Angels, Mariners, Barria, Mike Leake, Zach Gallen, and Hyun-Young Ryu pitch for the Marlins and the Dodgers. And finally, the Mets and Giants. I take it to beer. Jacob deGrom goes tonight for the Mets, and Tyler Beede goes for the Giants. And that is a look at those that shall resound of the bump. What were you laughing about?
I'm laughing because I just looked up. I didn't even look at last night's score, and we played a 16-inning game last night against the Giants. It was 1-1 into the 16th. We take a 2-1 lead, and we blow it in the bottom of the 16th.
And that Giants team can't hit a lick.
They've won 6 in a row. Unbelievable.
Good work out of you. Good work, Director Matthew. Great work. All of our friends up in Charlotte. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Be well.